Good afternoon and welcome to the June 24th, 2019 Salina City Commission meeting. If you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you. I was thinking too fast and forgot the most important thing, which was to call us to order and ask for the roll call. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Mayor Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Hay.
Here.
Commissioner Hodges.
Here.
Commissioner Hoppick.
Here.
Commissioner Ryan.
Here.
All right, let's see if I can read this correctly from here on out. Don't believe we have any awards or proclamations. All right, so we can go straight to Citizens Forum. It's an opportunity for anyone to come address the commission on any item that's not on the agenda. We just ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes or less.
Daniel Eckhoff, 655 Highland Avenue. First thing, I was wanting to ask if there was any update on the city policy about city employees not being able to display temporary political yard signs in their yard.
I'm going to refer that one immediately over to the city manager.
Yes, my understanding was that, yes, the commission did consider that, and I provided, as by way of my city manager, update excerpts from the personnel policy, and I think you might have described it as a First Amendment concern, and from a legal standpoint, it's not, it is compliant with the First Amendment. Our personnel policy addresses the need for kind of separation of city staff from any political activity, any political influence, whether it's by way of election or their service in their role. So you accurately described the provisions of our personnel manual. It's intentional. It is in keeping with legal review and the First Amendment. And so the commission has a copy of that, and it's at their discretion whether they feel that's appropriate or should be revisited.
Okay, I will continue, I guess, to challenge that, and I guess if we have to find other ways of doing that, I will. I don't believe that would necessarily apply to someone having a sign in their own yard on their own time, but we'll take that for a different time. Another thing I'd like to reiterate is there have been people who have suggested having the meetings at 6 o'clock 2 times a month, or just moving it to 6 o'clock. I unfortunately can't make it to the meetings before this one because my work is not that flexible. It's flexible enough to let me get here at 4 once per week, but I would genuinely like to be able to attend those. There's some information there that I miss out on, so I'd like to reiterate that request to move that back to 6 o'clock. The last thing I wanted to bring before you, it's not really been inside of anything, but I think we should look at reducing the penalties for marijuana possession. Just simple possession. I'm not talking about people riding with it in their car, being high while you drive, or dealing or anything like that. It's something the city of Wichita has done. They've reduced penalties, I believe, down to essentially a $50 ticket for the first offense, and then another fine for an additional offense. As a state, we're at a point where we're looking to increase our prison capacity, or alternatively, we could decrease that. I think a lot of people would agree marijuana penalties don't match the crime. I think a lot of us think it's quite silly. I think you guys can play a part in that, so I'd ask you to consider that. Thank you.
If I could just, for an informational perspective, ask the city attorney, what leeway does a city in Kansas have in setting policy, whether or not it's an arrestable situation?
I can't answer that very adequately for you just today, Mayor, but we could certainly pursue that if that is your wish. Would want to do that in consultation with the city prosecutor.
Okay, thank you.
May I follow up on
Sure.
with a question for Mr. Eckhoff, too? I would love to see the meetings get moved later, but I don't know, if there's not a consensus within the governing body, and to be frank, I don't know that we've really ever had a discussion about it. Maybe it's something, in the future we could get it as a discussion item on the agenda, but until there's that consensus, we may be right at 4 o'clock. So I guess I would look to my fellow members of the governing body and ask them if there's any interest in either looking at a later start time or at least opening that up to discussion and being able to talk to staff and seeing how that would affect them as well.
I think a lot of organizations, not as official as that, have the same issue. What's the perfect day of the week to meet in the perfect time? And never find something that pleases anyone. Anything, if we discuss it, we'll have to keep in mind the length of our meetings and the fact that in the wintertime it's darker earlier, which makes it harder for particularly older people to come out. I'm not advocating one way or the other, but just a lot of factors. Older retired people prefer 4 o'clock because it's light. Younger people working with kids probably prefer it later because they can at least get their work out of the way. But we can stew about it and see where the spirit moves us, so to speak. Thank you for your comments, sir.
Karen Shade Salina. As an older person who rides the bus, I prefer the 4 o'clock and the 2:30 meetings. I would highly encourage you talk to, you might be talking about city versus county. Talk to Ellen Mitchell, go up to the district court, go in with names to search the database of people who have these marijuana first possession things, because when I went and checked, they weren't charged, and I'm told it doesn't exist. So get your facts and bring them to this group. I think you need to get a whole lot more specific, because in the closeness that I followed this on the jail issue with the county, I think that's a false herring. So that's just an aside. Saturday, some of you may know that buses did not run the original 9 o'clock to about 10:10. They were 70 to 80 minutes late. So I was fascinated to have OCCK here. Michelle said that they had a protocol glitch as to why the buses didn't run. The reality was that Walnut Street was being paved very early in the morning on Saturday, and some of the drivers didn't know about it. So they rolled out of the OCCK bus barn and didn't have a way to get to their transportation hub on 7th and Walnut. And for reasons I don't understand, it took them a whole lot longer to figure out an alternative place, because I would have immediately thought of possibly the temple. There are some churches that don't meet on Saturday that they could kind of get themselves reestablished. No, they didn't do that. They have their phone number on every bus station, so I tried calling. I was at Iron, 1500 block by Social Security. I called again when I was at the Red Route on Iron and Ohio, called again at 10 from Iron and Ohio. No one picks up the phone. And in talking with her now, she had blanketly ignored my request that someone have a phone on weekends as being impractical. And I thought, there are drivers who were standing around with not much to do, and they probably weren't out with the buses just randomly driving around. Someone could have and should have been picking up the phone, because you do have people who might have been stranded, young women with children sometimes ride the bus, as do the people from the mission. They all get kicked out on Saturday morning. And if they'd had enough notice, they would have been put on their own bus and been taken appropriate places. But they probably didn't make it to the library like planned. And if Saturday had been a heat advisory day with 104 feels like temperature like they had the day before, that starts impacting fire and police departments. So, there needs to be some communication going on. In that same email that Mike Schrag just happened to get, I was raising concerns about the taxi cabs. They are a real challenge to me. When I temped a few years ago at City Central Garage, there was one taxi company that brought its vehicles in for the twice a year, I believe, inspections that generally were on time and the cars were in good shape. That's the company I use. In the last month, I tried to use them 4 times. 3 times they were 30 to 60 minutes late by their own estimates they were giving me. And I had one guy I stopped at Junk in the Trunk down on Front, and he got out and spent 20 minutes looking around, and I thought, you have other people waiting. What is this behavior? And so I bring this up because who represents the citizens when it comes to public transportation? I know lots of 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds who'd love to go out drinking and dancing, and they don't because they don't have reliable transportation. They want to do it responsibly, but they don't find suitable alternatives. I can't tell you how many times I've had the money, I've had the desire, I've had a plan of where I want to go, spend money, which you'd be collecting sales tax on. You'd be collecting sales tax on the taxi ride, and I choose not to go because I think to myself, now, if I end up having to wait 30 to 60 minutes, how unhappy am I going to be? And it's like majorly unhappy, and I think I'd just as soon stay home. So I think, you look at your problems. Some of us have said it's not really so much that Salina doesn't have things to do. What it really is there's no way to get around sometimes. And you have a lot of late night workers at the Applebee's and all of that who don't have buses that run late enough to get them home. And taxis become cost prohibitive, and you hate to think of someone being out late at night that way. So, and there was a huge bombshell in the study session that CityGo is of the feeling that while in the past they've had 5 bus stops on Santa Fe, they probably won't be able to fit those 5 bus stops in. News to me, kind of had figured it out, can't understand why they didn't have butts in the seat at the city planning meetings to make sure their needs were represented. I think that there's a huge conspiracy there. I wouldn't go so far as to say maybe the city intended to push the CityGo off of Santa Fe, but I don't see the Salina Journal here. I'm hugely furious Access isn't covering things that happen in that meeting. And I am thankful I understand your show, you're taping things on Facebook. But there are big things that happen that, I'm just so furious over this situation. I'm not terribly surprised. But I think, well, 3 of you are running for re-election or there'll be 3 open seats. I'm going to do my damnedest to make sure that people are aware of this screw up.
Here's someone else, okay.
Joan Ratzliff, Salina. I'd like to give some support to what Mr. Eckhoff had to say. I thought he had 3 good points. Regarding First Amendment rights for city employees. As a state employee, I understood that I was not to be political at work. I'm fine with that. I'm at work to work. But when a person is off duty, that's their time. If they're not using their position for political influence, I think that they need to have their full First Amendment rights. And if there's any question about it, I would suggest seeking a higher opinion. Because, as you know, I think First Amendment rights are extremely important. They're the First Amendment in our Constitution, after all. And I would support a later meeting schedule for people who work. I know that not everybody is going to be served, no matter what schedule there is, but what we have now I really think doesn't work, and maybe it works less well than it had decades ago. But when, candidates have campaigned in the past on changing the schedule and nothing happens, in spite of, what people ask for, like recording study sessions and things like that, I can understand people's frustration that they're not being heard when action isn't taken on reasonable requests. So that's what I wanted to say about that. And as for the media situation in Salina, it is a little bit scary, but with the decline in the Journal, people are complaining, and I'm still a Journal subscriber. And local news is very important. I think we need to maintain local control of local news, and we don't really have that in print side. So I would encourage, as you deliberate on your contract with Access TV, that you make that a priority to keep our local news locally controlled. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. I haven't addressed the political side of it because no matter how hard I try right now, I'd be trying to impersonate an attorney who knew the law. So best thing for me to do is make no comment on that, but at least just find out what the details are. Let's move on to the consent agenda.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of June 17th, 2019. And item 6.2, approve the proposed amendments to the bylaws and declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions for the Manchester Manor townhomes.
Is there any item a commissioner would like removed from the consent agenda? Okay, so is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Mayor Davis, I move we approve consent agenda items 6.1 and 6.2.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Administration, 7.1.
Item 7.1, second reading ordinance number 19-11004, amending Chapter 8, Article 3, Section 8-172.1, Chart 1, and Section 8-175, Chart 2 of the Salina Code to add a new category of contractor licensing for a specialty hood suppression, spray booth suppression contractor.
Okay, there's been no comments received on ordinance 19-11000. Is there any further input from staff or questions or comments from commissioners?
I don't believe staff has anything to add.
Any comments from the public? Any action to be taken from the commission?
Mayor Davis, I move that we approve on second reading ordinance number 19-11004.
Second.
It's been moved. It is, I'd read the wrong ordinance number the first time, but it is 11004. It's been moved and seconded to approve on second reading ordinance 19-11004. Have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Hay?
Aye.
Commissioner Hodges?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoppick?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan?
Aye.
Mayor Davis?
Aye. Motion carries on unanimously. 7.2.
Item 7.2, second reading ordinance number 19-11005, amending the International Fire Code as adopted by the City of Salina to add a new section to Chapter 14, Article 3, Division 1, to be numbered 14-3-1-107.2, pertaining to the required electronic submittal of all fire and life safety inspection reports to the fire department via a third-party administrator designated by the city or via an alternate method approved by the fire chief.
Okay, and this ordinance was also passed in first reading last week. No additional comments have been received. Additional comments from staff? Questions or comments from commissioners? Any public comment? Okay, entertain a motion on this.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve on second reading ordinance number 1911005.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 19-11005. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hay,
Aye.
Commissioner Hodges.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
Mayor Davis.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Item 7.3.
Item 7.3, second reading ordinance number 19-11006, amending Salina Code Section 7-34 pertaining to the keeping of bees and repealing the existing section.
All right, and this ordinance was amended.
Correct. I did have something I wanted to touch on this one. In response to the discussion about observation hives for the schools, it was amended between first and second reading based on the feedback that you provided. So it now includes subsection E that says school observation hives. A school may own and maintain observation hives on the school's property subject to the requirements of this section, other than the distance requirement relating to property upon which a school is located. And so it's basically trying to grant some discretion to the school to locate a observation hive on their own property.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from the commission? Any public comment? Entertain a motion on 7.3.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve ordinance number 19-11006.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded. Have roll call, please.
Commissioner Hay,
Aye.
Commissioner Hodges.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
Mayor Davis.
Aye, this passes 5-0. Item 7.4.
Item 7.4, consider approval of property exchange and acceptance of access and water line easements in Block 8 of the Oakdale addition to allow a garage to be constructed on Lot 11 and improve access for maintenance of a public water well site.
Ms. Tasker, good afternoon.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Patricia Landauer, Kyle B. Katrinberg, and Kathy Ayers jointly own a residence on the east side of Penn Avenue, just north of Gibson Avenue. Dean is working hard to bring that up, and it's not happening. So there we go. So I was stuttering there for a short bit to let him catch up. So basically, they own a residence on that piece of property. It's just north of Gibson Avenue. And it's addressed as 1331 South Penn. They also own a lot 11 just to the north of that piece of property. And in between those two lots, there's a 5-foot strip of land that's owned by the city. And in that 5-foot strip of land, there's a 10-inch raw water supply line that connects to our well house that's located on the backside of the property of Lot 11. The owners at 131 South Penn Avenue have expressed an interest that they'd like to construct a detached garage on Lot 11. But are currently not able to do that because Salina's zoning ordinance requires that detached garages be located on the same zoning lots as the house they serve. And lots 12 and 11 cannot be merged together because of that 5-foot strip that is owned by the city. And from the city standpoint, access to the public water supply well site is really difficult. It's back one, Dean, if you would. And for this reason, when we looked at the previous drawing, the alleys comes in and turns 90-degree bends, maybe even one more back, Dean. When we come in off of the street, we have to make a 90-degree bend, 90-degree bend, 90-degree bend down here. And the size of vehicles that we use for this maintenance, that just doesn't happen very well, and we have a tendency for their tires to get on private property, and then we're in a result where we have to pay some damages or do some repair for the property owners. And in addition, there's an overhead power line that runs along the east side of the well site, which makes it pretty difficult to try to pull pumps out of the well house. Maybe to the next slide, Dean. And so when you're looking here, here's the overhead power lines, and they run right along the east side. I don't know if you can roll that up a little, Dean, or... It doesn't like us, does it? But down at there, it gives you an idea of the size of the truck that we come in and the type of apparatus that it takes to pull this pump out of the well house, so you can see where power lines and safety would be a big concern for us. And this well was constructed in 1954 prior to the flood control levee being constructed, so it has this 4 or 5 foot berm around it, which is that earthen berm there, and that makes it really difficult for us to get our vehicles up to it and try to work from the alley. So we could go to the next one, Dean. So staff and Mrs. Landauer, we've developed a plan that we believe would allow her to build a garage and give the City of Salina Utilities Department much better access for long-term maintenance. And basically what this plan involves is a property exchange. And when we look at that, the city owns this track here, and we'll call it Track 2, plus we own this piece where the well's located. And the desire is to exchange this Track 2 for what we now call Track 4, that's owned by the property owners, and it's on the top piece of the property. And by doing that, what we end up with, and I always feel like I'm going to blind you, Lauren, so is one contiguous lot that, I'll start over here so I don't catch Lauren, that would come up, drop down, drop around, and then make that all one large contiguous lot that would allow them to build their garage on that piece of property. But in conjunction with this, we still would need a little additional property for access on the north. So we're looking at a permanent access easement that's 5 foot wide, which ultimately gives us a 10-foot access along the north property. And then also with the raw water line located along the south side of Lot 11, we would need a permanent water line easement there that would be 10 foot wide. And we're identifying that as a permanent water line easement, so that's the only type of utility that could be in there in the event somewhere down the road that is not needed or that well is abandoned, then the property owners would have the ability to have that vacated and receive that back. And basically the end result we really feel like is kind of a win-win or an advantage to both parties, that we have better access and they're able to move forward with their garage. There will be no direct physical impact to the city for this property exchange. Staff has identified 2 options for the City Commission to consider. And option 1 is approve the property exchange with Patricia Landauer, Kyle B. Katreenberg, and Kathy Ayers, and accept the offered permanent access and permanent water line easements. And to your packet, there was 4 documents attached. One was to authorize the mayor to execute a deed for Track 2, which is a city-owned property, to the property owners. And that's the one that we would be looking at the mayor signing today. The other 3 documents, one is to accept the deed for Tract 4, which is from the property owners to the city, and accept the permanent access easement on Track 6, and accept the permanent water line easement on Track 5, which would be documents that the property owners understand they'll be processing. Or the other second option is to decline to approve the property exchange and give staff further direction. And I would be glad to answer any questions you have, and Mr. Andrew and Mr. Bingston have helped me greatly move through a property exchange, since it's not my normal task. And I would also mention that the property owners are here. or a portion of the property owners, and if you have any questions for them.
Just so that it's clear, the water line still stays in the same place.
It does, and that is the need for the permanent water line easement.
And are there restrictions on what can be built in that strip? Assuming nothing, but
Easements are identified to where you cannot build structures over the top of them, and we have talked with the property owners, and they understand that.
so the garage will be at least that distance away from the
Yes.
house? Okay.
Be off of the easement on both north and south
South.
side of the lot.
That's my only question. Thank you. Any comments from the public? Ready to address this?
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the property exchange with Patricia Landauer and Kyle B. Catherinberg and Kathy Ayers, and accept the offered permanent access and permanent water line easements as follows. Authorize the mayor to execute a deed for Track 2, authorize the deed for Track 4, accept the permanent access easement on Track 6, accept the permanent water line easement on Track 5.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve this property exchange. Any further comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 7.5.
Item 7.5, authorize permission to exceed storm debris cleanup quote from CS Carry to mobilize and grind storm debris from Saturday, May 25th, 2019 storm event.
Mr. Cotton, welcome.
Good afternoon. Generally, I don't read the blue sheet word for word, but this blue sheet was completed this morning based on the weather event that we had Friday morning before the Parks Commission tour. The wind came in, and as we were touring, we noticed several more trees were down. So permission, the item is for permission to possibly exceed storm debris cleanup quote of $19,500 by CS Carry to mobilize and grind storm debris from the Saturday, May 25th, 2019 storm event. On Saturday, May 25th, 2019, a storm hit Saline with winds in excess of 70 miles per hour. This event caused tree damage within the city limits, and on Sunday, May 26th, 2019, authorization was given for the residents of Saline to utilize a specific location at the East Crawford Recreation Area to drop off tree debris caused by the storm. The drop-off site technically remained open through Friday, May 31st, 2019. However, with many residents having to work through the week, staff allowed cleanup to remain ongoing. On June 6, 2019, Parks and Recreation staff began working on securing bids to grind up and remove the tree debris. Initial pricing to grind the material was CS Carry in the amount of $18,500 with an estimated time of grinding 1 week. Evergreen Recycle gave a quote in the amount of $25,000, estimated time of grinding and removal at 4 weeks. And Salina Tree Incorporated estimated grinding and removal time of 4 weeks at a cost of $26,600. As cleanup continued, the pile has grown by approximately 30 linear feet. The original pile was approximately 451 feet in length by 40 feet wide and 16 feet high. The current pile is approximately 480 feet in length by 40 feet wide by 16 feet high. Staff reached out to the same companies on June 18th and 19th to get updated costs. CS Carry raised their price to grind to $19,500. Evergreen Recycle raised their price to $35,000. And Salina Tree raised their price to $27,900. On Wednesday, June 19th, the city manager authorized a contract with CS Carry to grind their material on site. Parks and Recreation staff will use tractors and the new grapple truck to remove and spread chips on site in preparation of the KKOA event. On Friday morning, June 21st, right before the City Commission Parks and Recreation tour, the edge of another storm brushed Salina with high winds. During the tour, staff noticed more damage caused by high winds that led staff to believe that more debris would be brought to the East Crawford Recreation Area over the weekend, and thereby causing the price to grind the debris to creep over the $20,000 city manager threshold. As of this morning, CS Carry will honor the proposal to grind the brush pile that measures approximately 480 feet long by 40 feet wide by 16 feet high, in an amount not to exceed $19,500. Any brush after that will increase the cost by $2 per cubic foot. Staff does not believe that more than 250 cubic feet of debris has been brought in since Friday morning, but there is that possibility that by the time CS Carry mobilizes and gets to Salina, it could happen. If more than 250 cubic feet of material arrives at the location, this would push the price up over the $20,000 threshold, thereby requiring commission approval. As you can see on the next page, you can see the debris pile. If you look, you can see Park Superintendent Rick Martin's truck on the right there, and you can see one of the barricades. That's where the pile had stopped previously, and you can see the new debris that has been brought in since Friday. Funding for this unexpected cleanup will come out of the general fund contingency, which currently has a balance of $23,100. The following alternatives are available for City Commission consideration. Approve expenditures in excess of $19,500 be paid to CS Carry at a cost of $2 per cubic foot for on-the-site grinding of storm debris in excess of the 480 by 40 by 16 pile of debris for which a contract has been previously authorized, or deny the request and give staff other alternatives. Based on the timeline for cleanup for the KKOA event and the fact that CS Carry was the low bidder for the initial and revised bid, staff recommends item number 1.
Now, has CS Carry already started, or they will?
They have not started yet, no. They sent a follow-up agreement this morning as of 6:20, this first thing this morning, saying that they would honor the 19.5. They have not mobilized yet, but they can plan on being on site within a week.
Okay. Any questions?
When is the KKOA event?
We start setup July 17th.
Okay. Thank you.
Is this site open 24 hours a day for people to drop off, or is it controlled by city staff?
We do not control it. We do not
Okay,
have staff
so-
after park staff leaves for the day.
So if people were needing to get the last limbs out of their yards, when does CS Carry expect to be on site?
They would be on site within a week, so this time next week they'd be on site.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments from the public? Okay, bring it back up to the commission for action. Oh, I'm sorry.
I had a question about where the grinding would go. Because Mr. Cotton mentioned removal, and I was wondering if it was going to be removed to, use in the parks, or as alternative daily cover at the landfill, or if it was going to be put to some use, or what the disposition of that was. Thank you.
We'll get it straight from the person who should know the answer to that, or who can find out.
As of right now, since we are running out of time on the KKOA, the plan is simply to move it out of the way of the KKOA. So if any resident or citizen wanted some of that at a later date, they could have that. But we would remove some of it to the landfill, but most of it would be pushed over to the far east of the property.
Our past experience has been this type of debris brings with it weeds and poison ivy, poison oak that we don't want to put in our landscaping beds.
Is it acceptable for trails, like, say, at Lakewood or anything like that, where a higher quality isn't necessarily required? I mean, I get why you wouldn't want to use it at Oakdale or Sunset in the formal beds, but, yeah. But do we still have a pretty big?
We have a rather large pile still at Lakewood, yes, ma'am.
Thought I'd seen that.
Now, can a citizen just come out and take some? Excuse me.
If they can load it, I mean, we could always schedule a time if there's still a big pile there that we haven't dispersed. We don't know how big the pile's going to be till they chip it up. We could always set up a time like we did several weeks ago, where we did have free mulch we loaded at Lakewood. We could always do that. But right now our priority is to get it out of the way for KKOA, and then we can always address that at a later date.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any action?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Alternative number 1, approving expenditures in excess of $19,500 to be paid to CS Carry at the cost of $2 per cubic foot for the on-site grinding of storm debris in excess of the 480 by 40 by 16 pile of debris for which a contract has been previously authorized.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to extend the spending authority for this pile of trees. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. No development business, any other business?
Okay.
Go ahead, Commissioner Ray.
I just got one short thing. I would like to thank the Park and Rec staff and the city staff. We had our park tour on Friday. It was a good tour. It was a great tour. A lot of eye-opening stuff to be out there. Matter of fact, we even added the Memorial Hall on, so we got to tour Memorial Hall, and they took us down into the dungeon, into the bowels of the old Memorial Hall, and showed us around. And we also got to take a look at the Salina Municipal Band Room that had been previously. I think we received some emails on that about some leaky roof, and so we've got some options for that. But I do want to thank the city staff and the city park staff for taking care of that, and Holly and the rest of them for feeding us that day.
I'm not sure who deserves credit, but that's the first city commission tour I've been on that was ahead of schedule most of the day. Usually it's the other way around.
We kept pushing.
And I wanted to add my thanks too. It was a really informative day, and I expressed to Mr. Scragg that I would really encourage us, since I've been on the commission, we haven't had like a comprehensive tour of Public Works or utilities or all the facilities that we're sitting up here making decisions about. And I just found the parks tour to be really, really valuable. And it's something that I hope, as as commissions change, as elections happen, that we can schedule more of these in the future. I thought it was very valuable. So thank you. I think park staff has left, but thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. And just wanted to get information on our timeline for receipt of the strategic planning
And
report.
maybe as early as tomorrow, if I can get through it and get it distributed.
Thank you. Well, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned until next week. Thank you.